Hey parenting junkies, present play is coming up. Find out more by visiting the link below this video. The Parenting Junkie. Hey guys, welcome back to the Parenting Junkie, the place to go to love parenting and for parenting from love. If you don't know me, I'm Avital and I come here every Monday to talk about peaceful, mindful and alternative parenting approaches. But today I'm not going to share with you any tidbit or any piece of advice. I want to share with you a personal story of mine that is pretty hard for me to share, but I think it's important to show this side of parenting as well. And you know, I wanted to come out here and more vulnerably expose moments in parenting, and I'm going to talk about one story in particular when we just meet our darkest sides and we just meet the sides that are most imperfect and that we would be most ashamed of if anybody else knew about them. So rather than hide that away and pretend it doesn't exist and just live in a highlight reel, I really want to continue to bring to you authenticity with regards to that. And the reason is because my general message and my general belief is really to love parenting, to enjoy it, to take pleasure in it, to find joy and to follow our bliss when it comes to raising our children, to really soak up the beauty, the gifts, be in a space of gratitude and feel blessed when it comes to raising children so that we can really be there, really be present, look back and say, I was there, I soaked it all up, I didn't waste my time worrying about petty things, or I didn't waste my time trying to escape. I didn't miss out on my children's childhoods. I was there. I learned from it. I grew with them. I connected to them deeply, etc. That's the love parenting part, to enjoy our lives, not to be victims of it. And the parent from love part is the part where we extend a loving energy towards our children in everything that we do, in how we guide them, in the choices that we make for them and with them, in being in a vibration of love rather than fear, rather than control, not punishing, bribing, rewarding, manipulating, yelling, spanking, using timeouts, all of the tools of the mainstream parenting that are really fear-based, and instead really being in a place where we are lovingly guiding them and raising them together. A space of consciousness, if you like. And that's what I really believe, and that's what I try to teach myself and learn and share with you. But sometimes there will be moments, days, weeks, months, where that's totally not how we are, or that's not, available to us. And I want to hold space for that too. So I think it must have been about a year ago, and I don't even know what happened, and I don't even know why this happened. I don't remember the backstory, but I was clearly holding a lot of anger and frustration. I was on the edge, of losing it. And I've lost it many times with my kids, and I wouldn't peg those times as my worst parenting moment ever. I've gotten physical with them. I've grabbed them more than I would like to, I've put them in timeouts. I've done things that I'm ashamed of, or that I'm not proud of at least. But this was different, because what happened here was, I remember that it was dinner time. It was late. It was after a long day, probably a long few days, if not years, of caring for young children. And my resources were a bit depleted, and I was probably kind of offline and disconnected. And it was the end of dinner time, and my son had, just worked for a few days on this very special, beautiful Star Wars Lego spacecraft, and it was complicated and difficult to build. And he brought it to the table, and we ate dinner. And at the end of dinner, I asked him to help clear up, I think. I think that was the trigger. That I asked him to help clear up, and he said something that I perceived as selfish or obnoxious. Now, selfishness or being unwilling or uninterested in helping others is a huge trigger for me. It's something that I find really difficult to stay peaceful in its presence. Like when I see that kind of, I guess an entitlement, or the sense that I don't need to help other people, or why should I, but I'm busy, I want this, and someone who cares only about what they want in that moment. I think it's something I recognize of myself, and something that I'm afraid of, and that I kind of fight so hard in my adult life to not be that way. And I haven't made friends with it properly. I haven't integrated the sides of, the differences and the tension between self and other, between putting our needs first and also meeting other people's needs. I think that's something that's still very hard for me to understand. I think it's something that I get confused by. Like, well, is this selfish of me, or am I setting a clear boundary? So that's something that I've worked through in therapy and through, my own meditations and growth and stuff. But it's still like a kind of a beast that I haven't tamed yet. So when I see that rising up in my kids, it's a trigger for me. And my son said something that I perceived as selfish, and I picked up his beautiful Lego that he had been working on for about 3 days, building carefully, and I smashed it on the floor. Oh my God. It was like a 2-year-old, or I don't know what, came out of me, completely unregulated, angry. I wanted vengeance. I wanted to hurt him, and I did in the way that hurt him the most. I just picked up this precious thing that he had just completed and smashed it with all of my might on the floor. And I know in that moment, I was trying so hard to prove a point of how angry I was and to express it and to cause him the pain that I was feeling. To externalize my sense of despair in the face of this kind of selfish, obnoxious attitude that I didn't know how to handle it, or that I wouldn't allow for it. That if that came into my house, I would punish it. I would stomp it out. I would extinguish it. And it was so embarrassing and humiliating that I had lost my cool in such a deep way that I was breaking my child's toy that he had built without a second's thought. Like, it was so automatic. I did it so quickly. And this is, while I'm preaching peaceful parenting and regulation and all of this stuff that I'm out here teaching. And I wasn't able in that moment to hold those lessons myself. And as I say, there are many moments like that, but this was particularly dramatic because I broke something, It was this physical lashing out and just a real lack of control that I found really frightening and I'm really ashamed of. And, obviously my son was really scared, shocked, upset, hurt. And, my husband was very supportive. He could see this was so not me. And, I say not me, it was a part of me, but not typical. And I must have been really, triggered. And we moved on from there. And I said to him in that very moment, one of the great things about practicing this work and studying it and meditating on it, etc., is that you can come back from things much quicker than maybe I used to be able to. So maybe something like that would have taken me days in the past, but here it took me seconds. I straight away realized that I was completely triggered, and that I was not in my right brain, and that I needed to take responsibility and make sure that my son knew that. So I straight away said to him, I'm sorry, I'm out of control right now. I'm so angry. I'm not managing to control myself. I'm going to fix this. But right now I need a few minutes. And I took a few minutes to myself. And of course I felt extremely guilty. And, maybe for some of you watching this, you're thinking, that's awful. Like, that's unbelievable that you did that. That's absolutely shocking. I'm never going to watch another video of yours again. And for some of you, you might be thinking, well, that's not a big deal. You just broke a toy. You didn't break his arm, which is what some parents do, So I guess it depends where on the spectrum you are and what your expectations are. But for me, it felt pretty bad. It felt really like I had let myself down. And of course him. But the cool thing about this is that there's always repair, right? So I immediately started Googling. I had to find the instructions for that piece because we had thrown them away, and find the instructions on how to build it. And I said to him, I behaved really badly. I didn't control my anger. I was extremely triggered. It's something that when I hit something that I think is selfish, it triggers something from my own childhood, and I need to work through that. And of course, I don't want you to talk that way, but my reaction was completely out of control, completely unsolicited, and really unhelpful. And I'm ashamed, and I'm sorry, and I'm going to work to make this right. And he was so forgiving, which I think most children are. It's really amazing. When you take full ownership, you can repair. And in this case, I was able to repair it physically as well. So I sat down till midnight that night building his spacecraft, promising him that it would be fixed by the morning and I'd leave it next to his bed, which I did. And that wasn't enough for me because I felt like I still needed to process that with him a little bit. So I brought it up again 2 or 3 days later, or a few times. I said, wow, I really lost my cool there. That was really uncool behavior, and I'm so sorry that I did that. And we spoke about how adults, lose their cool, and adults aren't able to always control themselves or use their words. And ultimately, I think that experience and experiences like it are a gift to us because it puts into perspective our expectations of our children as well, right? We expect them not to break things or not to hurt people or not to yell. And yet we have difficulty sometimes regulating ourselves with those things. And so it helps me to remember not to expect of him, or to expect, but not to, not to uphold him to a standard that I can't meet myself always, right? So to try and encourage both of us to be able to self-regulate and give ourselves the tools, learn those tools together, but not from a place of superiority, not from a place, that I've got this down, because I don't always. And it's humbling, which is always a good thing. It's a good thing to be kind of put back in our place and realize that there's work to be done, and that so easily, just that wrong sentence or the wrong behavior or the day with less sleep or whatever it is, puts us back in that place of our inner child who's acting out and tantruming just as much as our real child is. And that's also a helpful, perhaps painful, but helpful lesson. So if you've had an experience like this, or if this has resonated for you, give me an amen in the comments. Let me know if you've also done something impulsively or compulsively that you're not proud of. It could be punching a pillow, or throwing something, or stamping, or screaming at the top of your lungs. Something that you wouldn't want your neighbors to see. Because I think that when we shine a light on it, and when we own it, when we say, hey, this is actually part of my story, it's not so scary anymore. When I come out here and say this to you, it's not so scary anymore. Yeah, I did it. I did that. I broke my son's Lego kit. I smashed it on the ground full force out of pure anger and lack of control. And that's okay. It wasn't okay, but it was okay. It's something that is part of the human experience, part of my human experience and his, part of our story. And it's a great learning opportunity for both of us. Great learning opportunity. Like I'm very grateful that happened. Ultimately, it taught me so much. So yeah, share that with me. I would love to hear that from you. And if this has resonated for you, then after this, you might want to watch my video about anger in parenting and its role and how to overcome anger, and my video about why peaceful parenting is so hard. One of the things that is helping me stay in a peaceful frame of mind is listening to meditations. And you can get my full 7-track meditation album, which is all peaceful parenting meditations, over at theparentingjunkie.com. Keep on loving parenting and parenting from love, because your kids need you almost as much as you need them. Bye. If you're looking for a supportive community of like-minded parents, I warmly invite you to join our Love Parenting with Avital Facebook group. Plus, head on over to theparentingjunkie.com and sign up for email updates so I can gift you my free PDF guide, 10 easy steps to transform your home into a play-inducing haven. The Parenting Junkie.